Hello and welcome to another scene for the Living World of Darkness, Changeling the Dreaming 20th Anniversary Edition venue set in the Kingdom of Apples, New York City. Today's scene takes place deep, deep, deep in the bowels of the city, where factories long abandoned stay abandoned, gather dust, sit in the darkness. But pan to one Charles Egar, perhaps not on the same block as these abandoned buildings, but destined to reach them eventually. Charles, what are you doing?
Charles had taken at least a taxi to at least close to this area. Didn't necessarily want to take it all the way straight up to take me to the abandoned factory. That seems fine. Keep the meter running. That's good. No, he had recently had an interesting conversation at Cadwell's Tea House with Cadwell himself, and came to certain realizations and certain things that disturbed him a bit, in which he felt he needed at least another perspective on. And, well, despite the fact that he had spoken with Dice many, many times, and he would have gone maybe straight to Dice, a different idea had come to his mind. And he had texted Dice, and he said, "Hey, I actually would like to talk to your compatriot again. Is that possible? Is he still in town?" And the response that came back,
Yeah. Head down to this street at the corner of this other street. Wait until it's dark. Knock 4 times. Wait very patiently.
So Charles has made his way. It is nighttime. And he gets to the place, the corners of the streets, and it's that, I'm assuming it's that same building they met, or it's a different building, I'm not sure. But he approaches the door, and he knocks 4 times. And laces his fingers together and waits.
The door opens slowly with an irritating shriek as you see the figure, the long, slender, unsettling figure of Radovan. Looks at you with visible irritation, with more than moderate disgust, as his unsettling maw opens and he begins to speak. Yes.
Good evening. I apologize if I was intruding on something, but your friend of the ages pointed me in your direction, and I figured your wisdom would be most needed.
I hope I do not owe this perturbation of my silence to useless flattery, boy.
Well, I could be flattering, or I could just get straight to the facts. But I don't think either of those things are suitable for me standing on your stoop.
I guess I could pretend to at least be a gracious host and invite you in. But I warn you, boy, my time, though long, is precious.
Of course, you have important work to do, and I am just but a speck on your radar. But I accept your hospitality, if forced, graciously. And assuming he allows him in.
He reluctantly slithers out of the way and with a very unconvinced gesture extends a hand to lead you to
Mm.
his parlor.
And Charles follows through. That door behind him. So, as I said, I don't wish to waste your time, and you don't want me wasting yours either. To the point. I had a conversation with another one of your kith this evening. And about his nightmares with Mara. And we know those are still plaguing us these nights. But it was something that was a little disconcerting to me. He was dreaming about your history. Not yours specifically, but your people as a whole. How you were numerous once, and now time has gone by, and there's less. He's afraid that this might be his last time coming back. I remember Dice mentioning that reincarnation wears on the soul. Is it actually possible that there's just some that just do not come back?
I will indulge you with an answer. Young she, your friend, I am afraid, is somewhat right. We are old spirits, some older than others. Our coming back puts a strain on our soul. As any fabric, a soul can be strained only so many times before it tears, before it becomes a rag, before it lacks the strength and the will to come back into the mortal world. Most of our souls are old, are tired, disgusted with the state of the world around us. They will not be coming back, no matter how hard they try, no matter how scared they get. Entropy is a force that even our souls cannot escape.
But even then, you still find a way, find a purpose, a reason to be, keep your souls intact.
If a soul fails to find a reason time and time again, it stops looking for it. It is not the lack of reason. It is the lack of drive, the lack of hope. Eons upon eons of being met with the same sorrows, the same failures, the same insufficiencies from those around.
So you've seen even one such as yourself lose what makes you Shiashan.
Indeed, our state, blessed as some may call it, is as much a curse as it is a blessing, for we find ourselves in a state of perpetual balance, like a spider hanging from a web in a perfect, harmonious balance. But even then, a strong gust of wind is all it takes for the spider's web to get torn and for the spider to fall back into the unforgiving clutches of the world.
Since I've gotten here, I have seen so many just willing to just have it end, all of it end. I see them growing old, losing things in their life, and they just can't handle it, and they decide, you know what? Maybe next time things will be better. I'll get it right the next time. Or I see someone who says, I need to. This is what I have to do. I have to go. And in this slua, I heard something similar. Concern of why I should even bother doing these things, living this life, if it's ultimately not going to matter, even if I somehow come back, if I'm not going to remember. Slua doesn't even know its own purpose. It doesn't remember what the dreaming made him to be.
It is saddening, but not unexpected. You know why so many lose hope?
And he stands up and goes to one of the cupboards. And from the cupboard, he produces a skull, missing its lower jaw, old, dirty. He puts his index and his middle finger in the eye sockets and just grabs it like a bowling ball.
Mm.
And puts it on the table in front of you. And he points at the skull.
This is why people lose hope. This skull in front of you. Maybe he was a wise man. Maybe he was a martyr to his people. Maybe he was a wretch. Regardless of your nobility, of your higher purposes. Unless you can find that sacred balance that keeps you afloat, you are all but corpses waiting to rot, animated and vivified by a soul that you do not own, but simply borrow for a time. And unless you can provide that soul with joys, with purpose, with meaning, you borrow it for nothing. Graves upon graves, in graveyards upon graveyards filled with martyrs, with heroes, with people who were thought to be irreplaceable. Yet the world moves on. Some may die and come back. Some may die forever. It is not something you can prevent. It is something you can fight against. But fighting for people who have lost their drive is like going into battle with blind soldiers. Your intentions might be noble. Your strategy might be adamant. But your soldiers will find themselves lacking much to the joy and revelry of your foes.
And during this, Charles hasn't moved, not once. He hasn't turned his eyes back to Radovan, even though he still doesn't know that's his name. He has only stared down at this skull and staring at the empty sockets. Staring at him, and yes, there's no bottom half. But even with the broken teeth there, it's almost that mocking sort of half grin of death. As Charles is looking at it. But why do they give up? Why do they... Even in this place I've come to, it's so gray, even with its stinging iron and its bureaucracy with physics. Even then, there's these things around them that they take for granted. And they don't see the wonder that's in front of them. And they take and they cast it away, not seeing the treasures they see that are waiting for them.
They do this because they forget. They forget either what it is to be Fae and our sacred duties, or they forget what it is to be human with its joys and its sorrows. One cannot be one or the other. Our twin natures are tied with an umbilical cord of legendary strength. It is this balance that you need to seek. It is this balance you need to help your friends seek. If they have forgotten what makes them fey, remind them of their duties, remind them of the satisfaction that they bring. Do not let them revel in their faults. And keep in mind that I said faults, not sorrows, for feeling sorrow is a noble thing. It means you can still feel. Or take those who have considered themselves too good to have anything to deal with the mortals, and remind them that most share the same joys and sorrows of love gained and lost, of success and of failure, of great joy and dark misery. Do not forget, and do not let others forget, to learn and to feel. For a soul that dies is a soul that cannot feel any longer. For in this shielding from sorrow, you have barred yourselves from the bones of immortality and permanence.
Charles is still staring at that skull for a long time. And he reaches out and he picks up the skull. And he's looking at it. He's looking deep into those eyes. And for a moment, he stares at it. And something else seems to take over for a moment. Another side of him. And it's not Cararis speaking for a moment. It's Charles. Lost in memory of late years in high school, mandatory education. It was his love of literature that took him into that place to actually perform. Alas, poor Yorick. I knew him, Horatio. A fellow of infinite jest, of most excellent fancy. He hath borne me on his back 1,000 times now. How abhorred in my imagination it is. My gorge rises at it. Here hung those lips that I have kissed I know not how oft. Your glibs now, your gambols, your songs, your flashes of merriment that were wont to set the table to a roar. Not one Now to mock your own grinning, like the chap Phelan. And he closes his eyes. Even beauty can become sorrow. But even the sorrow means we're living. Puts the skull back down.
As he puts the skull back down, Radovan just waves his long, white, bony hands, and the skull turns into a little mound of dust on the table.
Sorry, did he smash the skull or what
No,
happened?
he just waves his hands and it just miraculously turns to dust.
Okay, gotcha. Charles sort of shakes his head for a moment.
Have you got your answer, boy?
I stop saying things. I do. I don't think I can let that Slua. He's even afraid to find out the truth of what his nature is. Worried to know of his purpose. Worried to do anything. Worried. Unable to live. Dice asked me if I knew if I was living. At the time, told him I didn't know. And he told me that if you don't know whether you're living or not, probably means you're not. And from there, I've come to a better understanding of how much I'm actually living. And I'm taking steps to live. But how can I teach another to live when even I don't have a full grasp of that?
Open your eyes to the world around you, child. Open the eyes of your friend. For there is enough to feel in the world. Communicate with your soul, and through it you shall see. If you are unable to feel your own pain, share the pain of others, and you shall understand. See the glimmer in the eye of a homeless man as you drop a coin into his cup, and you shall see hope. Look into the eyes of a bride left at the altar, and you shall see through sorrow. And see as much as you can till you will learn that there is no shame in the feeling, that it is feeling that keeps you alive. How would you expect yourself to be able to feel alive if you cannot feel a smile or a tear?
With that, Charles slowly stands up. You know, I gave you my name, the name of this form I wear as Charles, and I gave you the name of Kararis, Keeper of the Diamond Word. And you asked me what I would, and I'm not quite sure still, even now, what you'll do with that. But I'd like to know your name before I go.
There are few who know it. But if it would keep you from paying me so often in unpleasant visits, I guess I could give you the courtesy. Back in ages past, I was given a name. Back in the home country. A name that I still use. A name that few other. A name that mothers used to scare their children. Back when we were terrors. Back when I was young. Back when we were so strong that we could scream our terror, shriek at passers-by. The scared people heard my name. And that name is Radovan. The name that they have given me when they were too lazy or complacent or too terrified that the fear that I gave them chilled the bones in their bodies and the air in their throats. When they were home, when they were trying to act brave among their fellows, they gave me another name. They called me the unseen breath of the mad forest, for that was the name of the place of my birth. Now go, child, sit with your thoughts, for I have given you enough of my wisdom, and your searches have taken up enough of my time.
I hope if we meet again at some point in the future, that it'll be a time where we have a mutual path we have to walk, if but for a time. Until then, I leave you. Thank you, Radovan, for the hospitality you dredged out of your soul. And with that, Charles starts to make his way out.
Yeah, and Radovan is gonna see him to the door and open the door, and without saying anything, close the door behind him.
And Charles walks His face has grown a little troubled. Why did he say that monologue? Why in that moment? That wasn't him speaking. He stops. He turns and he looks at an old, dusty window. It's enough that he can see a bit of reflection, but he doesn't see Kararis in it. He sees Charles staring back at him. And it's there for just a bit flicker before it's Kararis again.
As he stands there in the street, staring at this visage, a ghost of who he once was, of who he is replaced, the sky opens up for rain. Rain warm with the season it doesn't belong to. And in the shadows, the sound of something following him.